thinking about this morning. Spoke with a client a couple days ago about they keep getting into certain conversations with people they care about, their family members, and when they use certain words, this has a profound effect, and kind of the conversation goes off the rails, or it's really frustrating, or they keep getting stuck in certain ways. And I thought about an example from my own life, and thought so much of the time communication is simply about figuring out, wait a second, when I say this, what do you think I'm saying? What do you believe I'm saying? Because sometimes we use a word and people use it differently. I'll give you a really quick example. A really quick example is my wife came from a different area of me than me, not in the same part of the country, but just a different area, and we use geek and nerd in a different way. Okay, so when we were first married, I would use nerd was like this super smart person, geek was like this awkward person. That's how I used it. But my wife used it the opposite way. Okay, and so when we would be talking, sometimes I'd be like, well, this sounds like I'm really nerdy in this way. And she's like, no, you're not. Like, how can't I not be? Like, do we not speak the same language? And yet as soon as we figured out we were using it the opposite way, now everything made sense, okay? Another really quick example. I remember having a conversation with my dad. I'm probably in high school, just after high school, something like that. I'm still at home. And I said to him, that idea is ridiculous. We were talking about an idea that he had. And he blew up at me. Now, my dad's changed a lot since then, okay? But he really had this strong reaction to me using that word. And at the time, I had no idea what was going on. And yet, probably a couple years later, I've been living outside. I've been living in Sweden for a couple of years. I come back to Calgary, and I think we're on a drive somewhere. And he tells me the story of how when he was young, if his dad wanted to just completely destroy an idea that he had and really demean him, he would use the word ridiculous. That idea is ridiculous. So when I use that word, when I use that term, guess what comes up for my dad? Or came up for my dad at least that one time. What came up for him was all this frustration and anger and sadness and hurt and pain and all this emotion from a term that his dad used to really demean him and treat him poorly. I'm using that word. Of course he's going to have a strong reaction, right? Because that's the way human beings live until we figure these things out. Until we figure out, wait a second, I don't need to react to this. This is my son. This is not my dad. This is a different situation. These things are attached to the word. There's nothing wrong with the word itself. For my client, what he was saying was he used a certain term, and the person said, "No, I'm not doing that." And my client was using a specific word, and when he used this, the other person reacted to it and said, "No, I'm not doing it," even though that's what the person was doing. Okay, so. This is what I want you to do. Here's the action steps really quickly. What I want you to do is, if you're starting to get frustrated in a conversation, you're confused a little bit, what I'd say is ask questions about that. As soon as you're confused, if you start asking questions about what you're confused about, you're going to start figuring out the answers. This happens to me all the time. I'll be a little bit confused. I'll say, what do you mean by that word? And they'll explain a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Or what do you think I mean by this word? When I say this word, what do you take it to mean? And again, that makes so much more sense. So what I'd really encourage you to do is ask a few questions, open-ended questions. What do you mean by this word? What does this word mean to you? Because this is what I hear. What often I hear people doing is one person's going, the sky is blue. And the other person's just as vehemently going, the grass has green. And the guy's going, no, the sky is blue. No, the grass. Well, guess what? If you communicate it the right way, both people would be like, oh, well, yeah, the grass is green. Yeah, I agree, the sky is blue. I'll give you that. And then go on their merry way. That's often what's happening in communication. So be willing to question some things instead of getting really riled up. Ask yourself a few questions, and you'll be able to calm down a little bit and figure out what's going on. All right. And practice this a little bit at home. Practice it with your family a little bit.